The massive space station hung in the dark void like a silver wheel spinning slowly around the bright star called Nexus Prime. Inside its gleaming halls, 12 different alien species had gathered for the most important meeting in galactic history. The air recyclers worked overtime to keep the atmosphere breathable for everyone, mixing oxygen for the humans, methane for the gas breathers, and humid warmth for the reptilian Corvani. Commander Jake Morrison straightened his blue uniform as he walked down the long corridor toward the council chamber. His boots clicked against the metal floor with each step. He had been humanity's voice to the galaxy for 3 years now, but today felt different. Today felt dangerous. The other ambassadors were already waiting when Jake entered the huge circular room. 12 seats formed a ring around a holographic display that showed star maps and trade routes. Jake took his place in the human chair, noting how the other 11 representatives avoided looking at him directly. Zexathera, the tall reptilian speaker from the Corvani Empire, stood up. His green scales caught the light as he moved, and his yellow eyes fixed on Jake with something that looked like hunger. When he spoke, his voice came out as a low hiss that the translation devices turned into words. "We call this emergency session to address the human problem," Zexathera announced. His long tail swished behind him as he gestured toward the holographic display. "Observe the evidence we have collected." The star map changed, showing human colonies spreading across the galaxy like drops of red paint on white cloth. Jake counted, quickly. 17 new settlements in just 5 years. Each one showed green dots for population centers, blue lines for trade routes, and small red triangles that meant military presence. 50 years ago, we welcomed humans to our galactic community, continued Zexathara. We offered friendship, trade, and knowledge. How do they repay our generosity? With this aggressive expansion that threatens the peace we have maintained for centuries. A blue-skinned ambassador from the Atlari Federation nodded her forearms in agreement. Their growth rate exceeds all historical precedent. No species has ever colonized so quickly without conquest as the primary motive. Jake stood up slowly, keeping his hands visible and his voice calm. Honored representatives, humans expand because it is our nature to explore and grow. We have broken no laws. We have attacked no one. Every colony was established on uninhabited worlds or through legal purchase agreements. Legal, perhaps, hissed Zexathara, but the pattern remains troubling. Your military escorts every civilian transport. Your colonies all include defensive installations. Your traders carry weapons as standard equipment. The crystal-based delegate from Xerion Prime vibrated with what Jake's translator called concern. We have studied the historical records. Only one other species exhibited similar expansion patterns. The destroyers nearly ended all life in this galaxy before we finally stopped them. Jake felt cold sweat on his forehead, but he kept his expression neutral. We are not the destroyers. Humans have fought alongside council forces against pirates and raiders. We have shared our medical knowledge freely. Our colonies provide food and resources to neighboring systems. All true, admitted the floating gas creature from the Nebula Collective, yet the pattern suggests preparation for something larger. Why else maintain such military readiness during peacetime? Admiral Lisa Parker's voice crackled through Jake's earpiece from the human flagship orbiting nearby. Jake, they've made up their minds already. The vote count is fixed, get our people out of there, but Jake couldn't give up yet. He looked around the circle of alien faces, some covered in fur, others with multiple eyes, a few that glowed with their own light. These beings had been humanity's friends and trading partners. Surely they could see reason. What exactly are you proposing? Jake asked. Zexathara's tongue flicked out briefly before he answered. The Human Containment Protocol. All human vessels and personnel must return to your original solar system within 6 standard months. Any human found outside the designated boundaries after that time will be considered a hostile invader and dealt with accordingly. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Jake felt the weight of 3 billion human colonists on his shoulders. Men, women, and children who had built new lives on distant worlds, who had married aliens, who had kids playing in alien playgrounds under foreign suns. You're talking about exiling an entire species, Jake said quietly. Forcing families to abandon their homes, their businesses, their lives. Better exile than extinction, replied the Corvani speaker. We will not repeat the mistakes that nearly destroyed us before. One by one, the alien representatives activated their voting crystals. Red lights appeared above 11 chairs. Only the small furry delegate from the Keeper Collective abstained, chittering nervously about insufficient data. Jake watched the lights appear and felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear exactly, but something harder. Something that his grandfather might have felt at Pearl Harbor or his great-grandmother might have known during the London Blitz. The vote is decided, announced Zex Thara. Humans have 6 months to comply. Transport will be provided for those who lack sufficient vessels. Failure to comply will result in military enforcement. Jake stood up very slowly and looked around the circle one more time. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but every translator in the room picked up his words clearly. You think you know us, he said. You think because we smile and trade and follow your laws that you understand what humans are capable of. You're making the biggest mistake in galactic history. Is that a threat? Hissed Zex Thara, his scales darkening. No, Jake replied, walking toward the exit. It's a warning. You think you're containing us, but you're just teaching us that playing by your rules was our mistake. When you realize what you've done, it will already be too late. The heavy doors closed behind him with a soft whisper of air seals engaging. Jake Morrison walked back down the long corridor, his footsteps echoing in the silence. In his earpiece, Admiral Parker was already coordinating with colony commanders across the galaxy. The evacuation would begin immediately, but Jake knew something. The Council didn't. Admiral Parker had been planning for this possibility since humanity first left Earth. The question wasn't whether humans would comply with the exile order. The question was whether the Council would survive what came next. 6 months later, the evacuation was almost complete. Admiral Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the last civilian transport ships leave the mining colony on Kepler 442b. Through the wide viewport, she could see the massive cargo vessels loading families, furniture, and personal belongings that represented 30 years of human settlement. Final count shows 2.8 million colonists evacuated from 47 worlds, reported Captain Ryan Mitchell from his transport ship. His voice sounded tired over the communication channel. The last group should reach the Sol system within 2 weeks. Lisa nodded but kept watching the planet below. Something about this evacuation felt wrong. Not wrong like a military disaster, but wrong like a magic trick, where you knew the magician was hiding something important. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Dr. Amy Foster supervised the final cleanup operations. She wore a standard environmental suit and carried the usual scientific equipment, but the 12 people working with her were not ordinary researchers. Each one had volunteered for what Admiral Parker called the long assignment. Council monitoring station reports normal evacuation procedures. Amy spoke into her helmet communicator. Estimated timeline for environmental restoration is 18 months. We request permission to maintain skeleton crew for ecological cleanup. The response came from a bored-sounding Corvani official. Permission granted. Standard protocols apply. Your team may remain until restoration is complete. Amy smiled inside her helmet. Standard protocols meant the Council would check on them every few months, but otherwise leave them alone. 18 months was more than enough time for what they really needed to do. Meanwhile, 3 star systems away, Ben Carter was leading a very different kind of operation. His transport ship had officially suffered engine failure near the dead system of Wolf 359. According to the distress signal, they were stranded and waiting for rescue. How many volunteers do we have total? Ben asked his second-in-command, a former colony administrator named Pete Wilson. 4,000 across all the stranded ships, Pete replied, checking his tablet. Engineers, soldiers, scientists, farmers, everything we need to start over completely off the grid. Ben looked out at the dark space around them. No council, monitoring stations here. No regular patrols, just empty void and the kind of hiding places that humans had always been good at finding. Admiral Parker's plan is working perfectly, he said. They think we're just desperate refugees making stupid mistakes. On the council station orbiting Nexus Prime, Speaker Zexathera reviewed the evacuation reports with satisfaction. The humans were complying exactly as ordered. No resistance, no desperate last stands, no terrorist attacks. Just quiet, organized withdrawal. Perhaps we misjudged their warrior nature, he told his aide, a younger Corvani named Veltar. They submit to authority more easily than our intelligence suggested. Veltar flicked his tongue nervously. The speed of their compliance concerns me, Speaker. Our own people would have fought such an order for years. Different species, different responses, Zexathara replied. Humans may be aggressive in expansion, but they are apparently practical when faced with superior force. What Zexathara didn't know was that Colonel Maria Santos was coordinating the most complex logistics operation in human history. From her command center, hidden in the asteroid belt of the Sol system, she tracked every ship, every person, and every piece of equipment involved in the evacuation. Transport Group 7 is ahead of schedule, she reported to Admiral Parker. The mining equipment from Tau Ceti is being delivered to the official salvage yards as planned. Good, Admiral Parker replied. And the other deliveries? Proceeding. Normally. Council inspectors see standard civilian evacuation. They don't look too closely at cargo manifests for mining gear and farming equipment. The truth was that much of the mining equipment being evacuated included military-grade manufacturing systems, advanced computer cores, and enough raw materials to build a small fleet. The council inspectors saw what they expected to see. Defeated, humans taking their belongings home. Dr. Amy Foster completed her first week on Kepler 442b by sending a routine report to the Council Oversight Committee. Environmental cleanup proceeding normally. Soil contamination levels dropping as expected. Local ecosystem showing signs of recovery. What she didn't report was the network of underground facilities her team had discovered in the abandoned mining tunnels. With a little modification, these tunnels could house a permanent settlement completely, invisible from orbit. The mining equipment left behind by the colonists was perfect for expanding the underground complex. We'll need at least 50 more specialists, Amy told Admiral Parker during their encrypted weekly briefing. Hydroponics experts, communication technicians, maybe a few people who understand Corvani technology. Already arranged, Admiral Parker replied. They'll arrive as part of the relief crew rotation next month. Captain Ryan Mitchell was having similar conversations on 12 other worlds. Officially, small teams of humans remained behind to clean up environmental damage, maintain abandoned equipment, and ensure proper transition to new owners. Unofficially, these teams were establishing hidden bases, gathering intelligence, and preparing for a very different kind of future. The most important conversation was happening in the deepest parts of the Sol system's asteroid belt. Tony Ricci, officially a civilian cargo hauler, was meeting with representatives from 6 different human colonies that had supposedly been evacuated. The council thinks we're all back home licking our wounds, Tony said to the assembled group. They have no idea that half the evacuated colonists never made it back to Earth. How many people are we talking about total? Asked Captain Nicole Brooks, whose smuggling experience was suddenly very valuable. Current count is over 200,000, Tony replied. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, farmers, doctors, plus all the equipment and supplies we lost during the evacuation. Nicole whistled softly. That's not a refugee population. That's the foundation of a shadow civilization. Exactly, said Tony. And we have 18 months before the council expects the cleanup crews to finish their work and come home. Back on the council station, Speaker Zexathara was congratulating himself on a successful resolution to the human problem. The evacuation had proceeded without major incident. Human compliance had been nearly perfect. The dangerous expansion was contained. His aide Veltar was less optimistic. Speaker, I've been reviewing the evacuation data. Something seems inconsistent about the population numbers. What do you mean? The official count shows 2.8 million evacuated colonists. But our pre-evacuation census estimated at least 3.2 million humans in the affected systems. Zexathara's scales darkened slightly. Counting errors are common during large population movements. Some humans may have been missed in the initial census. Perhaps, Feltar said quietly. But 400,000 is a very large counting error. Neither of them realized that those 400,000 missing humans were exactly where Admiral Parker wanted them to be, scattered across the galaxy in hidden bases, abandoned systems and secret facilities that didn't exist on any council charts. The evacuation was complete. The council's containment protocol was a success. Humanity had been banished from the galaxy and returned to their home system, except that wasn't what had actually happened at all. 5 years had passed since the human evacuation. The galaxy had settled into a comfortable routine without the troublesome humans spreading across every system. Trade routes had been reorganized, former human colonies redistributed among council species, and the great threat had been contained to a single star system. Speaker Zexathara reviewed the monthly reports with satisfaction. Crime rates were down. Border disputes had decreased. The aggressive expansion that had worried the council so much was now just a memory stored in historical databases. The human containment remained successful, he told the assembled council during their regular session. Our monitoring stations report no unauthorized human vessels beyond the Sol system boundary. The threat has been neutralized. But across the galaxy, strange things were starting to happen. Captain Vextor of the Corvani merchant vessel Golden Scale was having the worst month of his career. For the third time, his cargo ship had been attacked by unknown raiders near the Yao Vega system. The attackers never demanded ransom or stole valuable goods. Instead, they seemed interested only in his navigation computers and communication equipment. They took the quantum communicator again, Vextor reported to his insurance company, left everything else untouched, even ignored a shipment of rare crystals worth 500,000 credits. The insurance investigator, a blue-skinned Atlari named Kovis, had been tracking similar incidents across 6 different systems. Same pattern, every time. Unknown vessels, no identification signals, surgical strikes on communication and navigation systems. They're not pirates in any traditional sense. What neither of them knew was that Captain Nicole Brooks was leading these operations from a modified asteroid base in the Vega system's outer belt. Her team of former smugglers and military specialists had been gathering intelligence on council shipping for 3 years. Communications intercept successful, reported her technical specialist, a former Earth Navy engineer named Rick Davis. We now have the encryption codes for the entire Corvani merchant fleet. Nicole nodded, studying the holographic display, showing trade routes throughout the sector. Good work. What about the navigation data? Even better. We can now track Council military patrols in real time. They have no idea we're watching every move they make. Meanwhile, on the former human colony of New Eden, now administered by the crystal beings from Zerion Prime, Chief Administrator Zelok was dealing with a series of minor but annoying problems. The atmospheric processors kept developing small glitches. The power grid suffered random fluctuations. The waste recycling systems occasionally produced strange chemical byproducts. Nothing dangerous, reported the maintenance supervisor, a nervous creature that resembled a walking tree. Just inefficiencies that reduce our productivity by approximately 12%. Dr. Alex Chen, one of the few humans granted special permission to work as a technical consultant, examined the latest malfunction reports with apparent concern. These systems were designed by humans originally. Perhaps some compatibility issues have developed over time. What Dr. Chen didn't mention was that his monthly maintenance visits involved making subtle adjustments to critical systems. Nothing that would cause immediate harm, but small changes that would accumulate over time. He was one of 47 humans working legally throughout Council space, each one gathering information and making minor alterations to infrastructure. The most concerning reports were coming from the Outer Rim territories, where several Council species were experiencing supply shortages of rare elements needed for their technology. The Nebula Collective's floating cities required a specific isotope of helium-3 for their life support systems. The Atlari Federation needed rare earth metals for their quantum computers. These materials were still available technically, but The mining operations that produced them were experiencing unexpected difficulties, equipment failures, geological surveys that showed lower yields than expected, and transportation problems that delayed shipments for months. Tony Ricci, now operating legally as an independent trader with proper council permits, was making a fortune selling these scarce materials at premium prices. His customers never questioned where he obtained supplies that other traders couldn't find. "It's all about knowing the right sources," he explained to a frustrated Corvani purchasing agent. "Some of the old human mining claims are still producing if you know how to access them." The truth was that Commander Steve Walsh had been expanding his hidden base in the abandoned Kepler system for 5 years. What started as a single underground facility now included mining operations, manufacturing plants, and a small fleet of undetectable ships. His people produced the rare materials that Tony Ricci sold, creating artificial scarcity in the legitimate market. "Production is up 18% this quarter," Steve reported during his encrypted communication with Admiral Parker. "We're now supplying materials to 12 different council worlds, and they have no idea where it's really coming from." Admiral Parker, officially retired and living quietly on Mars, coordinated these operations from a communications center hidden beneath her garden shed. "Excellent work. What's the status of Project Midnight?" "Phase 2 is complete. We now have listening posts in 47 systems, monitoring all council military and civilian communications. They're talking about everything in the clear because they think no humans are around to hear them." The most subtle operation was being run by Dr. Gary Foster, Amy's brother, who worked as a xenobiologist for the Council's health services. His job involved studying alien diseases and developing treatments, but his real work was far more complex. "The genetic markers we've been introducing are spreading as predicted," he reported to his hidden research team. "Nothing harmful, just dormant sequences that will activate when we need them to. We're essentially adding backdoors to the biological systems of every council species. These genetic modifications were delivered through routine medical treatments, food supplements, and even atmospheric additives that were supposed to improve air quality. The council species welcomed these improvements to their health and environment, never suspecting that humans were quietly rewriting their genetic code." The strangest reports came from council intelligence services, who were tracking rumors of ghost ships and phantom stations throughout the galaxy, sensor readings that appeared for moments before disappearing, communication signals from empty space, gravitational anomalies that suggested large structures where none should exist. "Probably sensor malfunctions," concluded the Corvani intelligence chief, "or natural phenomena we don't fully understand. The important thing is that no human vessels have been detected beyond the containment boundary." But Speaker Zexithera was beginning to have doubts. The accumulation of small problems, minor inefficiencies, and strange incidents was starting to form a pattern that made him uncomfortable. "Veltar," he called to his aide during a private moment. "I want you to conduct a quiet investigation. Nothing official, just personal curiosity. I want to know if there's any connection between these random problems we've been experiencing." Veltar's tongue flicked nervously. "What kind of connection are you thinking about, Speaker?" "I'm probably being paranoid," Zexithara replied. "But something feels wrong about how smoothly everything has gone since the human evacuation. In my experience, when things seem too perfect, it usually means someone is working very hard to make them appear that way." Neither of them realized that their conversation was being recorded by listening devices that Dr. Chen had installed during his last maintenance visit to the council station. Within hours, a coded message reached Admiral Parker on Mars. The quiet. Years were ending. The council was starting to ask the right questions, but by then, it was already far too late to find the answers they really needed. The crisis began on a Tuesday morning when the agricultural world of Corvan Prime started dying. The planet had fed the entire Corvani Empire for 3 centuries. Its vast green fields and crystal-clear rivers supported billions of people across them, dozens of star systems. But now the crops were withering. The soil was turning gray and the rivers ran thick with poisonous algae. Speaker Zexithara stood in his private chambers watching the disaster reports stream in from his homeworld. The best Corvani scientists had no explanation. The ecological collapse was happening too fast and too completely to be natural. How long before widespread famine? He asked his agricultural minister. 6 months, maybe less, came the grim reply. We're looking at the possible extinction of our entire species. In desperation, Zexthara did something that would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier. He authorized contact with human ecological specialists, hoping their expertise with terraforming might offer a solution. Dr. Kevin Wright received the emergency call while he was officially tending his small research garden on Luna. The message was brief and desperate. Corvin Prime dying. Need immediate human assistance. Will provide full diplomatic immunity and payment. Kevin smiled grimly as he packed his equipment. After 5 years of careful preparation, the plan was finally moving to its next phase. He arrived at Corvin Prime, with a small team of specialists all carrying official council permits and scientific credentials. To the desperate Corvani officials, they looked like salvation. To anyone who knew what to look for, they looked like soldiers preparing for the final battle of a very long war. The damage is extensive but not irreversible, Kevin announced after spending 3 days analyzing soil samples and water quality. But the treatment will require some unusual methods. Working 18-hour days, Kevin's team began introducing what they called corrective biological agents into the planet's ecosystem. Within weeks, the dying crops began to recover. The poisoned rivers started running clear. The gray soil turned rich and dark again. The recovery was so remarkable that Corvani scientists demanded to study the treatment methods. That was when they discovered the first terrifying clue. These biological agents contain genetic markers that shouldn't exist, reported Dr. Velkes, the Empire's chief biologist. The molecular structure suggests artificial creation using techniques that only humans possess. But the truly shocking discovery came when they analyzed soil samples from before the crisis began. Hidden in the data were microscopic traces of the same artificial genetic markers, dormant sequences that had been introduced gradually over several years. Someone caused this crisis deliberately, Velkes told Speaker Zexthara during an emergency briefing. The ecological collapse wasn't natural. It was triggered by genetic time bombs that were planted in our ecosystem years ago. Zexthara felt his scales turning cold. Are you saying humans sabotaged our world? Worse than that. I'm saying they've been preparing to sabotage it for years, then positioned themselves to be the only ones who could fix it. The investigation that followed uncovered a web of deception that stretched across the entire galaxy. The rare material shortages, the communication disruptions, the infrastructure failures, everything had been orchestrated by humans who were supposed to be contained in their home system. General Patricia Hayes appeared via quantum communication during the emergency council session that followed. Her image materialized in the center of the chamber, calm and confident despite addressing the leaders of 12 species who considered her people to be exiled criminals. Honorable council members, she began with mock formality. I believe you've been experiencing some technical difficulties lately. Speaker Zexthara's voice was a barely controlled hiss. You deliberately poisoned an entire world. Billions of lives were at risk. No one was ever in real danger, Patricia replied coolly. The ecological crisis was carefully controlled. We could have reversed it at any time. In fact, we did reverse it as soon as you asked nicely. This is an act of war, snarled the Atlari representative. Patricia's smile was sharp as a blade. No, this is a demonstration. For 7 years, you've congratulated yourselves on containing the human threat. You've redistributed our colonies, reorganized our trade routes, and convinced yourselves that you solved the problem by sending us home. Ambassador Julie Thompson materialized beside Patricia's image. She had been humanity's official diplomatic representative to the council before the ban, but she looked different now. Harder, more dangerous. Did you really think we'd just go home and forget? Julie asked. Did you imagine we'd spend 7 years sulking in our solar system, waiting for you to change your minds? The holographic display in the center of the chamber activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots began appearing on star systems throughout council space. Hundreds of them, then thousands. Every red dot represents a human, Presence in your territory, Patricia explained. Research stations, supply depots, communication relays, manufacturing facilities. We've been here all along, watching, learning, preparing. Julie gestured to another section of the display. The genetic modifications we've introduced to your species over the past 5 years are completely harmless. Think of them as identification tags. We can now track the location and health status of every individual in every council species. The infrastructure modifications are more interesting, Patricia continued. We've installed backdoors in your communication systems, override codes in your transportation networks, and kill switches in your manufacturing plants. We can shut down your entire civilization with a single command. Speaker Zexathara struggled to maintain his composure. What do you want? Full council membership, Julie replied immediately. Not as junior partners or probationary members. Full voting rights, territorial recognition, and retroactive legitimization of all human colonies established before the ban. And if we refuse? Patricia's expression didn't change, but somehow she seemed more dangerous. Then you'll discover what 7 years of preparation looks like when humans stop playing by your rules. Marcus Webb, identified only as a human intelligence coordinator, appeared as a third hologram. Speaker Zexthara, would you like to know how we've been monitoring your private conversations for the past 3 years? Or should we discuss the 17 council military installations that now have human personnel in key positions? The chamber fell silent except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Each council representative was thinking the same thing. How could they have been so completely outmaneuvered? You've violated every law of civilized space, the Xerion Prime delegate finally managed. No, Julie corrected. We've operated within legal gray areas using techniques you didn't know existed. Everything we've done has been technically legal under council regulations. We're very good at reading the fine print. Patricia leaned forward, slightly. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to vote to lift the ban immediately. You're going to offer humanity a permanent seat on the ruling council. And you're going to do it unanimously because the alternative is discovering just how fragile your civilization really is. And if we agree to your demands, asked Speaker Zexathara, then we become partners instead of enemies, Julie replied. The infrastructure we've built, the intelligence networks we've established, the capabilities we've developed, all of that gets used to benefit everyone instead of threatening you. The genetic modifications become medical enhancements instead of tracking devices, Patricia added. The backdoors in your systems become security features instead of vulnerabilities. The choice is yours. Speaker Zexathara looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. Fear, anger, and resignation were written on every face. They had thought they were containing a threat. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous than an enemy. They had created humans with nothing left to lose. We need time to consider, Zexathara said finally. You have 1 hour, Patricia replied. After that, we start demonstrating some of our other capabilities. The 3 human holograms disappeared, leaving the council alone with the terrible knowledge that they were no longer in control of their own galaxy. The council had 30 minutes left to decide humanity's fate when the lights went out. Not just in the council chamber, but across the entire station. Emergency power kicked in after a few seconds, but the message was clear. Humans could turn off their lights whenever they wanted to. Speaker Zexthara tried to contact his military forces, but the communication systems were experiencing strange delays. Every message took exactly 7 minutes longer than usual to send or receive. Another demonstration of human control. They're toying with us, muttered the Atlari representative, her forearms trembling with rage. This is humiliation, not negotiation. But the real shock came when Admiral Karen Mills appeared in the chamber without using the holographic system. She simply walked through the main doors wearing a council security uniform, flanked by 6 other humans dressed as station maintenance workers. Sorry we're late, Karen said casually, taking a seat at the conference table. Traffic was terrible, and security was surprisingly easy to bypass. Speaker Zexathara stared at her in disbelief. How did you get aboard this station? Our sensors show no human vessels within 100 light years. That's because you're looking for the wrong things, Karen replied. She gestured to her companions. Meet my crew. They've been working on this station for 3 years. Jimmy runs waste management, Sandra handles environmental systems, Mike works in communications, and Lisa manages the power grid. The humans, she indicated, waved cheerfully at the stunned council members. They had been invisible employees, the kind of background workers that nobody paid attention to. But they had been listening to every conversation, accessing every computer system, and learning every secret the council thought they were keeping. Impossible, hissed Zexathara. All station personnel are thoroughly screened. No humans have clearance to work here. Dr. Gary Foster, still wearing his maintenance coveralls, pulled out a scanner and pointed it at the Corvani speaker. Actually, according to our genetic analysis, you're about 12% human now. The medical supplements you've been taking for the past 4 years included some interesting modifications to your DNA. The color drained from Zexathara's scales as the implications hit him. You've been changing us, altering our biology. Improving it, really, Gary replied cheerfully. Your reflexes are faster, your immune system is stronger, and your lifespan is about 20% longer. Oh, and we can track your exact location anywhere in the galaxy. But that's just a bonus feature. President Danny Crawford's voice filled the chamber from hidden speakers that hadn't been there 5 minutes earlier. Honorable council members, I think it's time we discuss the new reality. Where are you broadcasting from? Demanded the Serion Prime delegate. Does it matter? Danny replied. The point is that we're everywhere you are and you're nowhere we don't want you to be. Admiral Karen Mills activated a portable holographic projector that showed the galaxy from a perspective the council had never seen before. Instead of their neat territorial boundaries and official star charts, the display showed the real map of human influence. Thousands of red dots marked human facilities scattered throughout every council territory. Blue lines connected them in a vast communication network that bypassed every official channel. Green zones showed areas where humans had effective control over infrastructure, resources, or population centers. We've been building a shadow civilization for 7 years, Karen explained. Not to replace yours, but to make yours dependent on ours. Every ship you fly uses components we manufacture in hidden facilities. Every meal you eat includes crops grown on farms we operate. Every breath you take is filtered through atmospheric systems we maintain. Marcus Webb materialized as a hologram beside the real Admiral Mills. The genetic modifications aren't weapons. They're integration protocols. We've been making your species compatible with ours at the biological level. In another generation, the distinction between human and non-human DNA will be meaningless. You're talking about the extinction of our species, whispered the Nebula Collective representative. No, President Danny's voice replied gently. We're talking about evolution, about all of us becoming something better than what we were separately. Dr. C. Gary Foster pointed his scanner at each council member in turn. Every species represented here now carries human genetic markers. Your children will be faster, stronger, smarter, and longer lived than you are. Their children will be even better. We're not destroying your species, we're upgrading them. Speaker Zexthara felt something he had never experienced before. Complete and total defeat. Not the defeat of losing a battle, but the defeat of discovering that the war had been over for years and nobody had told him. What do you really want from us? He asked quietly. President Danny's response was immediate. Partnership. Not conquest, not domination, not revenge. We want to work together to make this galaxy better than any of us could make it alone. Admiral Karen Mills leaned back in her chair. The ban forced us to operate in secret, but secrecy is inefficient. We'd rather work in the open where everyone can benefit from our capabilities. And if we refuse? Asked the Atleri representative. Then nothing changes, Marcus Webb replied. We continue operating in shadow, making decisions about your lives without your input. You pretend to be in charge while we actually run things behind the scenes. It works for us, but it's not very dignifying for you. The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed the truth. They weren't negotiating the terms of humanity's return to galactic society. They were negotiating the terms of their own surrender to a species that had outplayed them completely. "Time's up," announced President Danny. "We need your decision." Speaker Zexathara looked around the chamber one final time. His fellow council members sat in stunned silence, each one realizing that they had lost control of their own civilization years ago without even knowing it. "The vote is unanimous," he said finally. "We lift the ban on human activity and offer full council membership with permanent seats on the ruling committee." "Excellent," President Danny replied. "Admiral Mills will coordinate the transition. Dr. Foster will continue his biological integration programs, and Marcus Webb will begin the process of making our intelligence networks officially part of Council security services." As the human team took their places at the council table, Zexathara realized the final irony of their situation. 7 years ago, the council had voted to ban humans because they feared humanity would conquer the galaxy. Instead, the ban had taught humans to conquer the galaxy so quietly and completely that their victims never even noticed it happening. By the time the council realized what was occurring, humanity wasn't just in the galaxy anymore. Humanity was the galaxy. The council members filed out of the chamber, each one understanding that they were no longer the rulers of galactic civilization. They were junior partners in humanity's empire, and the transition had been so smooth that most of their citizens would never know when it happened. 20 years later, historians would mark this day as the moment when humanity officially joined the Galactic Council. But the people who were there knew the truth. This was the day when the Galactic Council officially joined humanity, and as Speaker Zexathara walked to his quarters that night, he couldn't help but admire the perfect elegance of humanity's victory. They had been banned from the galaxy, so they had simply made the galaxy become them instead. It was, he had to admit, brilliant.